Well, this is a great way to start 2017 with one of my favorite segments of all time. It's about books, of course. The good ones, the dull ones. Well, not so much the dull ones, but the ones left off of the New York Times or Amazon bestseller list because of their conservative values. Joining me now, editor-in-chief of the Conservative Book Club, Chris Malagisi. Chris, hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Happy New Year's to you.
Happy New Year to you, too. It's great to see you. All right, Chris, let's get right into this. You run a conservative bestseller list, which ranks conservative books that might have otherwise been left off of some of the other major bestseller books. What have you got for 2016?
Well, we put together a top 10 conservative books of 2016 list, which was based on three criteria. The first was, did they have influence? Did they influence the national debate? 2, did they espouse some conservative principles within the book? And 3, were they value added to the conversation? A lot of books get published every year, but do they really add value to the conversation? So our editorial review board put together a top 10 list of all the best conservative books of 2016.
And I want to see which ones I've read and which ones I need to catch up on. So tell me at least what the top 3 are.
Sure, the top 3 books of this past year rather. Number 3 is Crisis of Character. It's a White House Secret Service officer discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. Many people might remember this book. This came out back in early spring by Gary Byrne, who was the former Secret Service officer who was responsible for standing outside the Clinton Oval Office during the Clinton years. And heard a lot of different interesting things, got to see them firsthand, but I think his big contribution was that reminded a generation that may have not lived through the Clinton administration just the kind of baggage that they would have probably brought to the White House again if she were elected. So
right.
that's
the thing I found really fascinating about this book, about Gary Byrne's book, was that it dived into a depth of their scandal that went beyond just the salacious details. Because I think you're exactly right. For a lot of millennials, when we think about the Clinton years, we think about, Monica Lewinsky, everything that happened, Bill perjuring himself, Hillary perhaps being part of this, knowing it, but turning a blind eye, a lot of the scandal of it. But if you look at exactly what went into it, that there was their political office was abused, not just their marriage abused, that's the part that's very troubling, and that was very eye-opening in Gary Byrne's book, I think.
Oh, it was definitely. And again, for a lot of people that may not have remembered, a lot of people remember the 90s as this wonderful time, and it was for a lot of reasons, but at the same time, there was a lot of baggage that went along with it too. So I guess we won't find out what Hillary administration would look like, but probably not much different than Bill.
Right, and that I think we can be thankful for in 2017. All right, what's next?
Next is number 2, Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of family and culture in a crisis. This is written by J.D. Vance. This is a very, not just a conservative book. This is a big mainstream book. I think for people that are interested in learning about the forgotten voter or the new silent majority or the voters that came out in droves for Donald Trump, this is an excellent book in understanding about that rural America, white-class worker who's kind of been left behind with the globalization that's happened. And I think just as an overall read, it's just an absolute wonderful book, but it also does tell their story, which is really, I think, the unspoken story of 2016.
Right, perhaps even why Hillary lost besides her dishonesty, because it was the blue-collar voter, the everyday man and woman in that blue belt, the proverbial blue belt that was broken, that could have given Trump his victory. What's number 1, Chris?
Number 1 on the list is Dinesh D'Souza's Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. And the reason why we picked this as number 1 is Dinesh D'Souza is very special. He not only goes after a conservative audience, but he tends to break through into mainstream audiences all around the country. Many people might remember that there was a companion documentary movie that came out along with it this past summer, and it just took America by storm. It was the number 8th top grossing movie of all time for political documentaries. And I think it did, again, also very similar to Gary Byrne's book, remind people of Hillary Clinton and the baggage that she would bring to the office, while also, I think, exploring the somewhat sullied history of the Democratic Party and their roots. And I think he did more to advance that than any other author last year.
Right. It's only been 2 months, Chris, since the election, and looking back, I still can't believe so many people knew all these things about Hillary Clinton and were still willing to vote for her. It's absolutely shocking. Let me ask you about this. This is a little more scandalous here. Milo Yiannopoulos, he's the tech editor from Breitbart. Very, very showy. He's very showy. He's openly gay, flamboyant. He puts on a college tour at college campuses where a lot of times riots are incited. He's been kicked off college campuses. You know the deal with him. He just signed a book, $250,000 book deal, and the internet's going wild, Chris.
I can't wait to read it. If it's anything
it.
like who he is, you already pre-ordered it. Excellent. Yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos is an interesting character. He's a lead editor at Breitbart News, and he's been creating a firestorm on college campuses all around the country. I think his big message is trying to remind people that the anti-free speech codes on campus are not good for the country's debate, and he definitely has his own individual flair and style, but this is a big deal for somebody whose first book, this is his first major book that he's going to write, and $250,000 is a lot of money, so great expectations for it. He couldn't have signed with better. Simon & Schuster and Threshold Editions is one of the best out there for sure.
Right, and it already shot to #1 on Amazon bestseller list, I believe, in the political commentary category, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Chris, last question before we get going. What are you reading right now?
You know what? I was just talking to somebody about this. I'm actually
you knew I was
going
to ask you this question.
The Art of the Deal. I know. The Art of the Deal, it was my vacation read. I actually had not read the thing from beginning to end. According to Trump, it's the greatest book ever written since the Bible, so I had to read it. And it's actually really good. It's interesting. You really get behind the mind of Donald Trump. And it's strangely eerie that he's not much different than what he was when he originally wrote the book in 1986. There are a lot of examples about it, but his mannerisms and how he operates, very similar to what it was 30 years ago.
Right, I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people that are worried about a Trump presidency are worried because they say he's unpredictable. But if you look over the course of his history, everything that he said about politics, the pattern of his behavior, I should say, it's very much the same as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, which I think can give us some confidence. Right now I'm reading, we just talked about this in the last segment, I'm reading No Campus for White Men by Scott Greer. Highly recommend, very good book. It's available for pre-order. I think the ebook, he said, comes out in just 2 weeks, and then the hard copy comes out by the end of the month. I just read over Christmas break St. John Paul the Great, too. That's a book about Pope John Paul II. Very, very good read. It's more of a historical look at his life than it is a religious read, but very, very good. Chris, it is always a pleasure to talk to you about books. Please come back very soon with an updated list.